If you find adventure at the click of a button, or from the turn of a page, or the casting of a die, join your hosts, Coniff and Shiloh, on an unforgettable journey. Questing the Multiverse.
Welcome to episode 21 of Questing the Multiverse. I'm your host, Shiloh, and with me is Coniff. Coniff, how you doing?
I'm doing well. We made it to the end of the season.
I know. Happy holidays to everyone.
Yes.
By the way.
Happy holidays. Hopefully in your part of the country, you will actually get a white Christmas if you're into that, I guess. Does Tennessee typically get snow on Christmas, Shiloh?
Well, last year we got pelted.
Dumped on.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was Christmas Eve. We had a work party.
Okay.
In the morning, we were going to be closed, but a bunch of lawyers decided they wanted a breakfast brunch thing. They wanted it on Christmas Eve. I think it was on a Saturday last year. Does that sound right?
Well, yes.
Yeah, that lines up.
It does for this year, yeah.
And that night, I remember at work, I mentioned to everybody, like, we're going to get a lot of snow, and it's not going to be pretty. And it started it was like a blizzard outside by the time I left work. And
this is the 23rd, right?
Yeah. And that morning, woke up and they had basically tried to force their hand to make the restaurant cancel on them. And it was kind of undrivable. Like, I couldn't get up my little hill that kind of exits my apartment complex. So I was like, oh, I can't do anything. But they ended up canceling. Well, we canceled on them. And so I don't know. Anyway, but yes, it does. From time to time, it will snow quite a bit. So we're kind of in that weird, not really southern, like Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, where we just don't see snow that often. We're kind of in that Kentucky, Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, that sort of strip of the border states, I suppose, if you were to throw the Civil War into it. But yeah, it's actually Tennessee wasn't a border state, but yeah. So
well, that's fun.
We get snow. I don't think we're going to get any snow this year, but I hope so. Because I like snow around this time of year. But
well, the holidays, as of this episode releasing, if you're listening on release day, Christmas will be a week away.
Yeah.
So what better time of year to talk about
Game
the
failures?
Worst gaming news in the history of gaming news in the recent years, and that is the day before, and it has since been the day after and many days after, and now the day no longer, I guess. But Shiloh, what do you know of this whole fiasco, as I don't think there's a better word to use?
Fiasco is a good word.
Yeah. This whole thing is just hilarious.
There was a review on Steam when I checked out this game. I had seen stories about it from Forrest and Forrest Gaming, and he was always, I think initially people were like, oh, wow, look at this
actually
game.
Coming.
And then, but then it just didn't really surface at all. There was a review that said, buy the day before, get a refund the day after. And I thought that was pretty good. That probably sums it all up. That's about all I know. I know that, the game was couldn't do anything right. So
yes.
That's all I know.
I mean, it's been in development for a while. I don't know if it was... I remember reading, and we'll get to the whole apology letter thing. But I think they said like 8 years or something, 5 years. I don't know. For a number of years, this game has been worked on. And originally, they announced it, and of course, the trailer had all the stuff that you'd want to see out of a zombie, post-apocalyptic game. And then years go by and we hear nothing. And then they show us some more and it doesn't look like they really did much. And then I don't know how long ago, but this year they finally like, guess what? The game is launching this year. And people are like, wait, what? And so people followed it, maybe a little more closely. We still get no information. And then it finally launches at the beginning of December. And 4 days later, the company is going under and closing its doors. And on one hand, it's like, okay, so this was just a giant scam the whole time. And on the other hand, it's like, I mean, what like a disaster for this company if it wasn't a scam to release a game that just completely gets obliterated by not only the players but the press and content creators and everything. Like, yeah, it's an embarrassment to the point that IGN gave it a 1 out of 10, which I don't think they give out 1s very often. So this is unprecedented. But yeah, you were saying earlier Steam has refunded or is refunding everyone or something. I mean, I guess you can't even buy the game on Steam anymore. So
yeah. No, it's not. You can't. Yeah. Oh, it makes me really hesitant, I guess. And it's sad because there are Kickstarter games and there are these types of games that come out of nowhere and blow the roof off the gaming industry and other, and not just video games, but, I know that you pretty stern advocate of tabletop, board games and that are Kickstarter based and that are really, really, really good games. So
well, that's
it's just sad because it's the boy that cries wolf, and it's going to make a lot of people more leery to fund a lot of this kind of stuff. And can't blame them. I mean, it would make me leery if I chose to, but I just generally don't.
That's always the risk, right? So like you mentioned Kickstarter for board games, there are certain board game companies that will put up a Kickstarter campaign that you're like, okay, this is going to see the light of day. And then there are others, and there are the horror stories of the games that end up 6 months to a year after the funding is successful and the campaign has ended. They will be asking for more money. I don't remember the game exactly, but there was a company that was under fire this year for doing that exact thing. They had basically asked for people to pay an additional cost or they wouldn't get their rewards after these people already paid. I've never experienced that on the board game front, but I am currently still waiting for a board game that I backed in. It was either 2020, I think it was the fall of 2021. Might even be the fall of 2020. But still, I mean, we're about to be into 2024, so 3 years later. But this game specifically, it's called The Seventh Citadel. It's like a tabletop exploration game. The same company that did that is the company that did a board game called The Seventh Continent, which was extremely successful. I think it raised close to $8 million on Kickstarter, which in the board game category is pretty high. Yeah. So I'm still waiting on that. But then, other ones I've backed, I've gotten. But yeah, like you said, like there's some games that on the video game front, like you get let's take like what we talked about with like Light No Fire. Like that game looks incredible, right? Just that trailer. I mean, you see that dragon flying around, the cool vistas, the building, like the settlement building type thing that you get to see, the big statue thing, whatever. A lot of cool elements. But if this was an unknown company and they put this out, people would be like, okay, this looks good, but they're making a lot of claims, which is exactly, ironically, what happened to Hello Games back when they announced No Man's Sky. So, but the difference now is, like No Man's Sky is a success story. It may have released 10 years ago or whatever it was in not such a great state. But now, they've really put their work into it, and I think they can leverage a lot of the same systems into Light No Fire. So this is just one more example of, you have to be cautious when backing or getting on board a hype train for a game that's not yet out. Like, you just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, think about, what was it, Atlas Fallen that came out earlier it was in August, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we saw the trailer and we're looking at it like, oh, this looks like a ton of fun, And then Stark played it, Tempest played it, and it was kind of just, all right, but nothing to write home about. I mean, that's the risk. Always will be.
Yep. Yeah.
So why don't we, instead of talking about the worst game undoubtedly the worst game of 2023, let's turn.
And they've beat out Gollum.
Yes, they did.
And that Kong game.
Gollum
That's
is
impressive.
actually playable, and Kong is also playable.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Shiloh. In a year for which we've gotten some killer games, we've also gotten some real stinkers. And between Gollum and Kong, I didn't expect to see a game that would be worse than Gollum specifically.
Oh, God.
Here we are. So let's turn our attention to, instead, the top 10 games we played, and we each have our own list, in 2023. Dun, dun,
Yes,
dun.
my precious.
And it's not, Gollum will not be on either of our lists.
No.
Some housekeeping before we get started. So we've got our list. We're going to go in order, 10 all the way down to number 1. But we also have 2 honorable mentions each. And then we have 2 categories, kind of like auxiliary awards. I mean, we're not handing out any awards. We're no golden joysticks or the Game Awards or whatever. But those 2 categories are the best surprise hit game of the year for each of us, and then the best comfort game. So that game that you just keep going back to when you're like, I don't really feel like playing anything. I just want to like shut my brain off and go to it. So, before we really dive in, Shiloh, let's kind of rehash this conversation we had before we started the episode. So you were saying it was tough for you to come up with this list because it made you realize what?
It's no real surprise. I'm pretty much a RPG MMO fan, so I put a lot of hours into specific games. So I didn't have a whole lot to choose from, probably compared to you or, a more diverse type of gamer. But, looking at the hours played for a lot of these games on my list is pretty astronomical when you think about the number of hours that I couldn't even put a time or date on a lot of these games.
I wish Steam would do a recap. And of course, like, we play games on Xbox, Steam, so it's all over the board. But
and then I've got others, downloads through other things.
But like Goodreads, which is for books, they give you a recap. Of course, like, these are the books you read this year. But one interesting bit of data that they give you is how many pages you read that year.
Oh, that's
So that was neat because I was like, okay, like I've read 9 books so far, but really that's like 3,000 some hundred pages, which is neat to actually see it in that form instead of just here's the 9 books you read. Well, yes, I know because I've kept track of them. So it'd be cool to get that with Steam. But I, unlike you, I did play a ton of variety, and I think I clocked in 43 different games that I played this year with a playtime over an hour. Actually, I think I included the finals, which I only have like 54 minutes in, according to Steam, but it's close enough. So 43 games, and even like you said, like some of those being MMOs or you big RPGs, like you put hundreds of hours into them. I also had a paternity leave at the beginning of the year, so I had 3 months of no work, which meant whenever the kids and wife were napping, I was playing a game of some kind. So, man, I'm looking at this list and I'm like, this is a really tight list. Like I made like a 1 through 20 because I was like, I don't know. I want to see like where it actually land with some of these, but
yeah.
Do you want to kick it off with honorable mentions, Shiloh? What
Sure.
are your honorable mentions?
All right. So first up for honorable mention is a game that's probably fairly beloved, maybe a little on the cusp with certain gamers, but Diablo 4,
Okay.
which I played on the Xbox X. Played a good amount of that with our buddies Swine and Reaper and Bunticles. And then also solo. And I had a good time with the game. I was a little scared and hesitant to download it on my PC after our buddy Jeff's computer.
Yep. And Weevils.
Caught on fire. And Weevils, yeah. Caught on fire. So, yeah, I was like, oh, I'm going to download this on my Xbox, and if it catches on fire, I can send the Xbox to Blizzard, and they can do something with it. So, but I had a good deal of fun with the game.
Okay.
I was hesitant on buying it because I've never been a huge fan of Diablo, and I think it just has to do with the environment, and
It's very dark and depressing.
it's just very dark in the darkness, and you fight the devils and that sort of thing, which I'm like, okay, that's cool, I guess, but it's
Do you think
oppressive.
you will play Path of Exile 2 when it comes out?
I'll probably give that a shot, yeah. That because I like that top-down
Okay.
kind of dungeon crawler kind of game. It's not necessarily my top end of what I really enjoy as far as an RPG is concerned, but I enjoy them, and that's kind of my biggest quirk and my biggest gripe with Diablo as a franchise is exactly what I mentioned. There's just no diversity in what you're going through. It's all kind of samey same. Which is fine for a lot of people, and they dig it, but I'm just not into that. It's like if you were to only, in ESO terms, if you only went to Stonefall or that area of or just where it's just volcanoes and devils and it's just like, oh God.
What's that alternative realm in the Blackwood DLC? So you've got you know what I'm talking about? Mm, that'd be like going there 24/7.
The Deadlands or whatever it is.
The Deadlands.
That's basically what it is. So it's like, get me out of here. I don't want to be here anymore. That's my biggest gripe with it. And so Path of Exile 2 looks really, really good. Number one, I know that there's a lot more diversity in gameplay and classes, but it also looks like there's huge diversity in environments, which is kind of a big thing for me for whatever reason. So
I agree with you.
That's my first honorable mention is Diablo 4.
Nice. I agree in that capacity. Like it's very dark, depressing, and samey. And then you look over at the Path of Exile 2. I mean, they've been doing class coverage or class specific videos. So I think they did a mercenary one recently, but they did the monk, maybe one of the wizards. I don't know. And there's a ton of diversity in the biomes, it looks like. And so as someone when you're playing an ARPG, I think like since you have that fixed camera, you don't get to look around in detail at stuff. Like it helps if the scenery and the enemies and all that stuff changes over time. So,
Yep.
Okay. I was going to say, what's your second honorable mention?
Oh,
you do
my
your two,
second
and then
honorable.
I'll,
okay, that's fine. That's fair. My second honorable mention is Final Fantasy 14. So picked this up twice, I believe, during the year.
Once at the beginning and once near the end.
Yeah, once at the beginning, once near at the end of the year. And it's always been a game that I've just been meaning to get back to. And this second go around, I'm like, all right, we're gonna do this. And I just haven't really felt it yet. And I don't know why. It could be that I've kind of lost my place with my job, and I don't really know where to start. So I had to I kind of restarted a Marauder.
Like your actual real life job? Like, how's that?
No. I hate when they call them jobs in that game.
It is confusing.
They're classes. That's what they are.
Yeah.
But they call them jobs. So what are you going to do? But yeah, I can't totally, I don't know. I have to figure out a way to get back in and finish out Shadowbringers. And then once I get back into the story and I have some time, that's another thing. It's a sub, and I kind of drop back into WoW just to kind of, it's a little easier to pick up something new. And I was like, okay, well. Yes. And when you're leveling new jobs in that game, it can be kind of a chore, kind of a grind. And I've leveled so many of them, and I'm just not totally invested in it. So I'm just like, okay. But sooner, probably by the time right before Dawn Trail, I'll probably get back into it and get back up to the speed. Or once you guys get, like you and Beetle get caught up with me, I'll probably jump back in just to kind of like, hey, I'm back.
Well, I'm level 40 pretty much in all three of my jobs, and my MSQ's right at 40. So I finally got to that point where everything converged. I don't know if I'm going to pick up like a actual tank class or job and a tank or a healing job. I thought about it. But
just hold off, I would say.
Yeah. Well, the problem is, like you said, like the leveling, the MSQ is starting to get somewhat interesting. Like around the level 40 mark, some things have happened, and there's some interesting directions it's going. But getting there, and everyone has said this about Final Fantasy 14, so it's not a surprise, but it is a chore to level up now. The thing is, though, like I am enjoying it, and because everything can be done on a single character, I feel like I can just take my time because I'm not like losing out by, well, I want to go try this class in this character, and I got to go do that, and then go do the same story again. It's like ESO. Yeah. I can just simply play this character, try a new job out, and then once it's up to a certain level, maybe go back to the MSQ and whatever. So, yeah, I feel that.
Cool.
My two honorable mentions are, and one might be an upset, and it is Guild Wars 2. So, I love Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2 this year was a lot of catching up, trying to get the storyline done before August 21st or whatever it was when Secrets of the Obscure came out. And looking back on the whole year, because we did our Guild Wars 2 recap episode, and it's such a monumental game for me personally, because it was, it got me out of that ESO funk of needing to compete for DPS and, push that gear grind and the hardest of the hard content into just an MMO that is about playing with other people and doing, meta events, world bosses, even questing and collection logs, from the achievement stuff with other people, unlocking mounts even. Like, that type of stuff was such a breath of fresh air in 2020. What year are we? The end of 2022. That, come 2023, I took a pretty big break from it when I played WoW, and then up until the summer, and then I started playing it a ton again to catch up. It's just one of those games that like it is my favorite MMO of all time currently. So that should tell you something about maybe foreshadowing the rest of the list. But Guild Wars 2 is my number one MMO. But here is my honorable mention because there were just so many good games that I played this year.
Mm-hmm.
The second honorable mention is Fortnite, surprisingly. And this one sneaked its way in entirely because of the Fortnite Festival, Lego, and whatever the racing is, rocket racing, that they just added, and the OG season. So Fortnite is not Shiloh's cup of tea, listener. That's no surprise to me, him, anyone. But what they did by implementing these 3 new game modes, and the fact that previously to this season, they went back to the original map that was extremely popular, worldwide popular in 2018. Like it became just this fun game to play again. As stupid and silly as it is at times when you're seeing Vegeta hit the gritty, which is the dumbest sentence that I have said in the past month, probably. It's like that type of stuff though, like it's iconic now at this point. Like the way this game has evolved and taken over the world and the video game medium. And truthfully, I am having a ton of fun with the Rock Band game mode. It's like I used to play back in 2000 something. Guitar Hero was the big game of the time. Everybody was playing Guitar Hero, and then Rock Band came out, and those type of rhythm games were all the rage. And so this has been fun getting back to it a little bit. And it's all just inside Fortnite. So yeah, I didn't think this was even gonna land on this list. And then when I really got to thinking about it, I was like, man, they really did.
I thought it would make your top 10, but
no, not when not with some of this other stuff.
No. All right.
So, well, shall we dive in, Shiloh? Do you wanna start, and then we'll just switch who starts each number all the way down? So
yeah, number 10.
I don't have any fancy sound bites. Actually,
that's mine.
I originally still had the ones on here that Rowan did. Yeah, see right here.
Number 10.
Actually, I wonder if I have all of them. We might just use them. I, in fact, do. So
nice. All right.
There you go.
So number 10. The only reason this game is where it is on my list is because it's the game that has the least amount of playtime. I have a feeling that once I put more playtime into it, it would be a lot higher on this list, but that is Horizon Zero Dawn, which is a really, really good action-adventure RPG that was originally on the PlayStation and now has a PC port. Still waiting on the new Horizon game. That might be years with what PlayStation and their PC porting. But yeah, I've only put right at an hour into this game so far. I just haven't had the time. I haven't had much time this week. This week in particular has been brutal at work. But hopefully for the holidays, I could sit down and have a little break from table making when I'm on vacation for the Christmas week, and maybe play some of this game because it is very, very good, and I'm looking forward to that. So number 10 on my list, just by promise alone, is what we're going to go with here. Right. Not necessarily on playtime because I've only put an hour in, but promise alone, Horizon Zero Dawn.
Is the story compelling so far? I've never played it.
Yes, very good. And that's pretty much all I've gotten into. Like there's not a whole lot of... Yeah, it's a very good setup for the story, and it's I haven't really done a whole lot. Like I just got into from kid. I don't even remember her name, like the main antagonist character. I can't remember her name. But as a child to kind of more of a teenager or young adult. So
Gotcha.
I've finally gotten into that era, and yeah. So
Shiloh's number 10, Horizon Zero Dawn. My number 10 game for 2023 is a JRPG, and I haven't played a JRPG in a decade or more. And that game is Sea of Stars. It is an incredible JRPG, 1. 2, it's got that old retro 16-bit graphic or 8-bit. I don't know. I don't ever remember which one's which. But the story's really interesting, and intermittent throughout, like these major story moments are these like anime cutscenes almost, and not like, like what maybe you think with anime, but they're like stylized these animation cutscenes of these big moments, which just kind of add flavor and impact with the story. And so I haven't beat it, but what I really got in the habit of doing, I think it was in the summer, whenever it got added to Game Pass, I would play it and the kids would watch, and they just hang out and we would watch me play this game, and it was just a ton of fun. I would so because it's an old like it's a retro styled game, there's no voice acting, and so I read all the character voices in their character voices, so the kids love that too. But just all in all, like, I mean, this game did win Best Indie Game at the Game Awards, so it's not like just some obscure title. Like, it came out and it's huge. And I guess I should also mention that not, as you probably learned with Shiloh's Horizon Zero Dawn, but not all of these games released in 2023. I think I
was about to mention that too. It's like,
I forgot to mention this, but
that game didn't come out in 2023.
They're like, what year is Shiloh in?
1927.
Yeah, so this list specifically is just of all the games we played this year, no matter when they released, what was our top 10 favorite experiences, whatever. So I'm glad we were both on the same page on that, because every year, we do a list like this and someone probably is out there like, they didn't.
Well,
that game came out in 2011. Whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
All right.
So my number 10, Sea of Stars.
Number 9.
I am gonna
Number 9 is another game that I have not put a whole lot of time into, but at least 2 to 3 times more than Horizon Zero Dawn. And it also gets my surprising game award.
Okay.
And that game is V Rising.
Oh, okay.
So this game had kind of come on my radar. I had kind of looked at it. I'm like, that game looks pretty good. That game looks interesting. And then Tempest had posted something in a Discord we're in, and I was like, hey, are you considering that? He goes, I don't have a good Tempest impersonation, but so we'll just pretend that
you're gonna play that. That was terrible.
There you go. Oh, you're interested.
Oh, you gotta play that. He's got a little higher pitched voice. He's probably gonna send me a message about that.
Yeah.
I'll wait for it, Tempest.
Control-Delete to Spotify. But yeah, this game is very, very good. And I'm really wanting to get back into this too. It's what's the best way to describe it? It's a survival top-down ARPG, but it's also survival. It's got base building. You basically play as vampires. The coolest mechanic is that it has a night and day cycle, and obviously in most vampire fictional worlds, vampires burn when the sun comes out, and this is one of those worlds where vampires burn. So when the sun comes out, you have to be very cautious, and the way you can manage it is if you go in the shadows, which you have to be very careful about. Like, oh crap, where are we? Oh, look, we can hide behind this trees. Like, don't chop any of those down because we gotta hide behind those if it turns sun, because we're stuck out in the middle of nowhere. And it's a lot of fun. It's it can be challenging too, at least. It's really, 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 really good. I highly recommend this game, at least giving it a shot. It definitely beats out Diablo 4 in that type of game for me.
Top-down, yeah.
And I'm not necessarily huge into vampires either, but it's very, very good. So that's my number 9 is V Rising. It's a Steam. You can download it on Steam.
Nice.
I think it's $20. So
V Rising. My number 9 is Hell Let Loose. I'm not gonna lead into it at all. Hell Let Loose was a big game for me in 2022. We had a consistent group of probably even 5 to 7 to 8 people every Sunday when we'd play. It just was a ton of fun. It's World War II first-person shooter with a massive tactical and strategic element. So, you've got your squads. Each person in the squad is a different role. There's an officer, and then there's a commander player who is commander of the entire team that you're on. And so, like, all the squad leads and commander can talk to each other in a voice chat. You can then talk to your individual squads. That's a separate voice channel. And then there's a third voice channel for local area chat. So it can get chaotic at times because most of the time we are in Discord. So if we don't have a full squad when we've played, we'll have some people in our squad in game that aren't in Discord. So then you add Discord chat, squad chat, commander chat, and area chat, and it's a whole mess of confusion.
Yeah, that's making my head spin.
Yeah, but there is just nothing like it that I've played in the multiplayer FPS world. The game is a lot slower paced than Call of Duty or even Halo or Fortnite or anything like that. Like, it's, you have to be strategic. You just don't run and gun like a hero because you will get destroyed.
With a shotgun.
With a shotgun everywhere. A flamethrower even, all sorts of stuff. But this year specifically, I played it a whole lot less than I did at the end of, or the last, 5 months of 2022. But every time we'd play it, like, it's got that, like, it scratches that itch of that tactical, cooperative, working together game that just I don't have in anything else. Even games that are designed to be cooperative, like, I played Lethal Company this year. It just doesn't scratch the same itch. Hell Let Loose is, and plus it's World War II, and that's, as someone who I minored in social sciences, and a big part of that was history. Like, I am fascinated by World War II history. I watched all of Band of Brothers this year. I still need to ship it back to Stark, so that's a whole thing. But then I watched the movie Downfall, which is about the final days of Hitler. Just some plenty of documentary stuff on World War II. Like, just my fascination for this subject is probably unparalleled compared to any other time in history. And so this game, despite it being a video game, simulation of battles and stuff, like, it's just been really fun. So that's my number 9, Hell Let Loose. Let's see.
Number 8.
Number 8 is Starfield for me.
Okay. Fascinating.
I was hoping this game would be a lot higher pre-launch and probably currently than it is, but it is what it is, and that pretty much sums up Starfield, I think, for me. Starfield is what it is. It's Skyrim in space. I was hoping it was going to be a little bit more, I think. And I think it is more, but I still have a hard time completely diving into that game. And I think it just has to do with space, really.
Yeah, you're not a huge sci-fi person.
Not a huge sci-fi person. My favorite sci-fi stuff is Star Wars, which can be argued not barely sci-fi at all. So it's I'm not a huge sci-fi nut. So this game is nestled right at 8, and I think that's a good spot for it. It's one of those games that I'm hoping I can get back into because I have a lot to do in that game. And I have a lot of stuff to uncover, and really, I haven't really given it a total shot. So I'm just going to put it right there at 8 and
that's fair.
Call it a day.
We may hear about this game later. We'll see. My number 8 is, technically speaking, a game that released in like 2002 or 3 or 4 or something. I don't know. But this year on the Switch, they released a Legacy Collection for Mega Man Battle Network. There are 6 games in the series, and then I think 3, 4, 5, and 6 all have 2 games each. And this was, again, early 2000s. They did kind of the Pokemon thing where they'd release 2 versions, and then there were some slight differences between each version. And so specifically, my number 8 game is Mega Man Battle Network 3 Blue. So I have all my old Game Boy cartridges of this series. And the third game of that series was split between the white version and the blue version. So I had the white version and played through it and beat it and, completed it at once upon a time. Like, still have the cartridge. I have all the stars on the menu that signify you did all these things. And so I when they released this Legacy Collection, I was super pumped. I drove to GameStop. My local GameStop didn't have it. So I drove to another GameStop, and they did have it, and I bought it and went home and showed my kids, and I was super excited. And this game is it was just 100% nostalgia, but it's like a top-down sort of JRPG walking around, but the combat is entirely like this 9x9 grid. So 9 spaces here, 9 spaces here, right and left. You're on the left side of the screen, and you can move around in those squares, and the enemies are in the right side of the screen. And you get these battle chips that give you certain abilities and special abilities, and so each round, of combat, and this is all live combat, by the way, but like each round of combat, you go into like the battle chip selection screen, and you can choose which battle chips you want for that round. And then once it starts, you're moving around, dodging attacks, using those chips that you queued up and everything. And aside from that, that combat is just fun for me. But like the story and just seeing these like, pixels, this is what it is, again after like almost 20 years or whatever, it was just a massive nostalgia trip. To the point where they even had the show that they made. They made an anime about this game, or rather, the game was made because of the anime, and it was Mega Man NT Warrior, I think. My kids loved the show. We started watching them on YouTube before Capcom took them all off YouTube for some reason. The kids loved it. It's just this huge nostalgia hit for me. And again, it's I've got all 6 games now on this Legacy Collection, so I'm going to go through them over the course of however many years it takes. But just a massive amount of fun, a huge nostalgia hit, and really just a reminder of like, yep, this is what I played in my childhood that I loved so much. So that is my number 8. We now have
Number 7.
My number 7 is World of Warcraft.
Okay. Nice.
So we've had 2 iterations of this game
And
this
one,
year.
Yeah, which one has been more impactful for you?
I don't know. The first time around, as a community, we had a lot more fun. At least there was more.
It was newer.
It was newer for definitely you and I,
Yeah.
and so there was that. This time around, though, I think just as mainly a solo player through, I think really the only grouping I've done other than some random pug queues for stuff on my Volpera Rogue is with Weevil. I made a new character because he wanted to level up a character, a Horde side character, which is what I've done the second time around. And I leveled up it was a Blood Elf Rogue that I got to 40, and then I quickly did the Volpera quest and unlocked the race, and then shelled out some money to basically change my Blood Elf to a Volpera. I didn't really want to re-roll, and I'll do all that kind of stuff. So, and I was digging the Rogue, so I was like, no, I don't want to roll up another Volpera and make another class that I'm not really going to care about. So went ahead and did that. I think the Horde side of Battle for Azeroth, I really enjoyed that quest line a little bit more. And maybe it's because I played it all solo, and so I was able to kind of delve deep into it. But it also made me realize that, I know Ardith and I were talking about the Hordes to me, and I know that Cash and Jibs are going to cringe but if they hear this, but they're like the Rebel Alliance to me. I think Ardith made that comparison, and it does kind of ring home. It's like, yeah, they kind of are. Like, they're just kind of this downtrodden, just patched together kind of alliance of misfits, and I kind of appreciate that. I know that probably a lot of that has to do with PvP stigmas and things with Horde, and I don't have that background, so I'm like, oh, I dig these cast of characters because they're more enjoyable and fun. But I think that maybe this, at least I think I identified a lot more with the Rogue than I ever did with the Warlock. I just couldn't fully, and I definitely couldn't get into the Mage, which was my first character that I made. So, and I don't know if I'll keep going with WoW, but for now, it's been fun, and it's definitely, it's been enjoyable. It's like we talked about, it definitely has the most fun, or one of the most fun leveling processes, I guess you could call it, in the MMO sphere. I could argue that a little bit, but it is definitely one of the top 2 for me, I think. So
gotcha.
It's been a lot of fun. Yep.
And they're coming out with The War Within or something.
All the new stuff that they're releasing looks good.
So we know we're going to go back to playing it at that time too. Like,
probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say so. So even if I put this on the shelf, I'll at least have a level 70, level 70. Sometimes I get my level caps confused with games.
Of all the different games. I also said, like, this is kind of, there's like 3 MMOs that I see myself playing ad nauseum, I guess.
Just back and forth.
And that's Guild Wars 2. It's free. It's easy to dive back into. And then Final Fantasy 14, because it's arguably the second best MMO of all time. And then there's World of Warcraft. And so it's just like, between those 3, like, if I need an MMO fix and there's nothing new that's coming, like, I'm not gonna, I mean, maybe we'll go and play SWTOR or something. I know I want to at least, like, get through a story in SWTOR.
Yeah, it would be fun. We could do that.
Yeah,
I haven't played that game forever.
But as far as like the ones that you can come back to and whatever, like those three, I think are the
that's fair.
Ones. So my number 7 is also my best comfort game. Kind of that game that I just, put on when I'm like, I just want to go back to something that listen to the music and get into. And that is Risk of Rain 2. So this is a roguelite game, very fast action, especially if you play like Tempest and Weevil and I play, which is with the artifacts that let us choose our abilities. And so by the end of the run, we are so cracked out on our abilities and stats and everything that we're zipping around killing stuff in one shot, and it's just a ton of fun to go through this game, get the loot, get items, do tons of damage. There's secret unlocks that you can do, not so secret unlocks, but like you can unlock different abilities for each. Are they called survivors? I don't know. Something. Planetary interlopers, I guess, that you are. But it's just this fun, like, intergalactic game of, combat and loot, and roguelite, meaning that, like, you never know which planet you're going to get to, or biome or whatever, because I think it's all the same planet. Which location you're going to be on next. And this game is getting a new expansion that was announced this fall, maybe early November. I don't know when it's coming out, but it's just that game for me that I go and jump in when I don't feel like leveling up a battle pass or grinding out something here or doing one of the many things I have to do in an MMO. Like, I just want to put on this game, even solo, listen to the music, and just play. And Tempest is the one who introduced me to this game, so I owe it to him. But yeah, this is easily my best comfort game of this year. And my number 7 game, Risk of Rain 2. Yeah, there we go.
Number 6.
My number 6 is arguably the best MMO ever created, Guild Wars 2. So I've put a good amount of time into this game, although not nearly as much as probably last year, but I have kind of kept
it was
up
very
with it.
condensed last year. Like,
yeah. But with the Secrets of the Obscure coming out, I had finished out, well, I don't remember when I finished out, because I kind of came back. Well, a lot of people were still playing WoW. I'd abandoned ship and I'm going back to Guild Wars 2. So I'd finished out all of, because I had, why am I brain dead today? Probably because of work all week.
Well, finished out a legendary. You finished out Icebrood.
Yeah. I finished out Icebrood Saga. So I went back, finished out Icebrood Saga, went into End of Dragons. There we go. That's what I was thinking of. And did, got the Aurene Dagger.
Yeah.
Aurene's Claw.
Which was for
whatever.
what class, though? What was your...
Multiple classes. Because I can use it on my Spectre build, but I was also using it on my Tempest build for healing in World versus World.
Gotcha.
And Virtuoso. I mean, there's so many different... I can also use it on my Ranger. So there's a lot of different, almost every class. Other than my Revenant can't use a dagger. But I was like, well, daggers seems like a good fit for picking up that, and it was a good deal of fun. But I also did I think mentioned it before, but Chupacabra and Herald, Chuka and Chumpawat, that I finished out. It was just probably one of the hardest legendaries to complete, is because there's so many steps. And so got all through all of that and kind of entered the storyline of my Revenant finally for the new area, Inner Nios. So I'm in the enemy territory now for the cryptids. So, and that area is interesting. It reminds me a lot of the Witch Queen layer.
Okay.
Not Divinity, Destiny 2.
I remember.
Which the different hues of it looks sort of pretty, but it also looks really terrifying. It's kind of almost spot on for with that. There's lots of bone-esque kind of stuff with kind of pink hues and white, and it's a really interesting zone. But I don't think I hopefully won't have to spend a whole lot of time there because it is kind of deadly. But yeah, Guild Wars 2, that's going to be my number 6. So I did the birth of 2 new characters. So my reroll on the Mesmer class with my Jinx as inspired Mesmer, my Mirage, and then my Revenant, Tofa.
And you are the greatest Revenant player of all time.
Yeah, well, we don't need to reiterate that for Stark. But
We do. He needs to hear it again, I think.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, you have done more legendary stuff than I thought you would. Because I think when we first learned the amount of effort that was going to go into this, and this was back in, fall of 2022, we looked at it and we're like, maybe. And then you have done it 0 I have struggled to even do it once, so I have zero legendaries.
The hardest part is just, frankly, is with the short bow, it was a lot of work, questing and stuff, but it was a lot of fun at the same time. But then you add on all of the other stuff that normally goes into a normal legendary that you have to get done. And a lot of that is kind of resources and actual, probably real world money, let's face it, and getting enough gold to where you can buy a lot of the resources, because there's just no way that a normal person would ever be able to accumulate all this stuff. So, yeah.
That's fair.
But, yeah, Guild Wars 2.
My number 6 is a game that I played through, and the game probably crashed 30 times. And I still suffered through it. I love it enough that it's even my number 6. And that is Star Wars Jedi Survivor. If you exclude all of the technical issues, of which there were many, believe me. And I got frustrated at times. Jedi Survivor is 100% improvement on Jedi Fallen Order. It's like the Ori and the Ori and the Blind Forest versus Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Will of the Wisps is a better game than the first game in all the ways. Both games are great, but Will of the Wisps added so much more to the game. And in the same capacity, Jedi Survivor improves upon Fallen Order. I mean, there's more to collect. There's far more cosmetic custom options now, all of which are in-game that you can unlock. There was collectibles for this cantina that you're building up over the course of the whole game. There's even like this random tactical 3D chess thing that's not at all Dejeric, which is what's being played on the Millennium Falcon by Chewie and C-3PO. It's somewhat similar. It looks similar, and I think that was probably the inspiration for it. But it's this whole like mini game inside this game. And then there's this secondary quest line for bounty hunting, so you can go hunt down, members of the antagonistic groups leadership and stuff. And so all these little things, and there's all, I'm not going to spoil it, but there are some pretty like heavy hitting moments too. It's an incredible game, like technical issues aside, but like the story is great. It's dark. It's a lot more, like not twists and turns, but it's a lot more believable than the stuff from Disney's sequel trilogy with Rey and Finn and all them.
Yeah.
It felt closer to like Andor or The Mandalorian as far as like the setting and the feel of it. And that really made it great. Like there was a lot of moments and it's the only game in my entire Steam library. Again, I had over 30 crashes. The only game in my entire Steam library that I have 100% of the achievements on, because I was hell bent on doing it, partly out of stubbornness, but yeah. So it's a really good Star Wars game. Hopefully the technical issues are mostly worked out at this point, and I don't think people on console really had the issues that PC people did, which is always surprising when that's a thing. But number 6, Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
Number 5.
Number 5 for me is a game that we grew to love. You and I in particular.
Yeah.
Divinity Original Sin 2. So... Okay. This is a precursor to the elephant in the room, and it began the illustrious Larian love, I suppose. It was a game that I had picked up a long time ago on Xbox and was trying to get a lot of people into it. Like, hey, we should play this. And
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I was like, we should. I was trying to push for this type of co-op play for this type of game, which probably would have led down probably the same road that the other Larian game did with multiplayer, because it's a little hard to coordinate, and I know it's not quite as the same as in this game, but yeah, I really loved this game, and still do love this game. It's just a masterpiece of an RPG in every way. So if you are a fan of the before mentioned elephant in the room, you should definitely give this game a download and try as well. So that's my number 5.
All right.
Lots of hours put into that game.
Yeah, you beat the whole thing too. Like,
yeah.
Number 5 for me is my return to Black Mesa. Game itself, Black Mesa. So Black Mesa is a fan-made recreation of Half-Life 1. It's Unreal Engine 4, I think, or maybe the Unity engine, but modern graphics. And I picked this up because it was $5 on some deep sale. And I hadn't played Half-Life 1 in at least 10 years. And I don't think I played very much of it back then, because it was Half-Life 1 came out in the 90s. And then Half-Life 2 came out in 2004. And Half-Life 2, when Half-Life 1 came out, it was great, but there were some problems with it. Like the end in Zen is basically unfinished. But then 2004 comes around and Half-Life 2 launches, and it basically, again, like we talked about with Jedi Survivor, it improved on the first game in almost every way. It just made what the first game was good at better in the second game. And so that same thing happened this way. But then these fans got together and remade Half-Life 1 into Black Mesa. And that might be like the greatest love letter to an original game that I've ever played, to the point where like it is in the a newer engine, newer graphics, physics, all this stuff, but I like distinctly remember parts as I was playing, like these areas of the game, and I wouldn't be able to name them because that game is more like just, action adventure. Like you're just going through this facility. But there's a specific part where you're going through the facility and there's, electrical wires dangling down and the floor's wet and there's like a caution wet sign and stuff. And that whole sequence through these like back offices of Black Mesa was just, it was this so much nostalgia, but like actual fun modern gameplay that it blew me away. And then they completely renovated the entire back end of the game once you go to the alien world, and to the point where I couldn't even remember what was new and what wasn't. But then the final fight was just mind-blowing. Like they completely changed it, there was not much there in the original game, to be fair. So they took what there was and just expanded upon it tenfold. And it was just this whole experience, this, great, fun experience, to the point that, I was like, this is one of the better games I've played this year, hence it being number 5. To the point also that I went and played Half-Life 2 after this and was like, okay, Black Mesa is better than Half-Life 2 now, because Half-Life 2 is still in 2004 engine. So, with the same graphics and stuff. So I'm hoping that someone remakes Half-Life 2 down the line in a modern engine and we can see that. But yeah, Black Mesa
Won't be Valve.
It won't be Valve because they're on the Steam kick. They don't need to make video games anymore.
No, they're out of that.
But yeah, so if anyone out there, like you played Half-Life and you loved it, you should, and you haven't played Black Mesa, you should go buy it and play it because it is a great recreation. And especially if you're like me where you haven't played it in decades, you're not going to remember some of the finer details. And so it's a really good experience that way as well. So that's my number 5.
Number 4.
Number 4 is the Division 2 for me.
Nice.
Yeah, this is a game that we all picked up and started playing and had a ton of fun. At least I know I did. That's why it's up to number 4 for me. It's an older, not really an older game, but it's got some years on it. And makes me really excited for Division 3 that's been announced that they're going to do. But yeah, everything about this game I just really enjoy. It has some of the coolest, interesting, I guess, missions you would call them, with like going into the space museum, and I mean, it's just so many interesting, cool. The graphics really kind of blew me away at points too. I'm like, this lighting is really, really good for this game. But yeah, just the mechanics and having fun going through and getting through the Warlords of New York, which I never really thought I would finish that out, but did. Eventually Tempest had to help me out with a few missions there, but that's kind of the fun of the game, is you can kind of jump in, jump out of other people's stuff and help them out, and yeah, it's just a really fun looter shooter. I kind of scratched that itch after Destiny has kind of let me down, definitely this year. So
Yeah.
didn't even make any of my lists. Spoiler alert, but yeah.
Sadly.
There you go. Division 2.
This game, Division 2, for me, it didn't make my list, but it was a very close honorable mention consideration because I think it kind of fixed in my brain the whole third-person cover shooting game.
Much better.
Well, we played
Gears.
Yeah, whichever Gears it was, the new one.
4? Well, 5 maybe.
And Gears has a good story, and I think that's its selling point. But like, I just can't do the
constant
mechanics
cover
of it.
Yeah.
So Division is a mix of that, but with a little more freedom, I think, in movement. And Yeah, I had that was a really good, like, that was like what we were playing that like the start of the summer. I think it was. That was a really good start to the summer. Like, just kind of like, oh, let's, dive into a non-zombie post-apocalyptic Washington D.C. So
Yeah. No.
and then the war. Which map do you like more, the New York or the Washington D.C.?
Honestly, DC, because it brings back memories of when I worked and lived near there. And it's a lot of familiar territory. I mean, I've been to New York a few times, but never lived there. So,
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. That was your number 4, The Division 2. My number 4 was Shiloh's number 5, and that is Divinity Original Sin 2. I can't remember before playing this game the last time I played a turn-based strategy game like that. Now, it's an RPG. It's a story RPG. But the combat in Divinity Original Sin 2 was way challenging at the beginning. Like, until you started to get a feel for it, just extremely challenging. And the fact that there's no quest markers, you just, good luck. This is like an RPG, like a tabletop RPG. Here's your character, go figure it out. It was exceptionally challenging at first, especially like Fort Joy itself. Once you get past Fort Joy and move on to the other part of that island, you have a better understanding of what's happening. But Fort Joy was pretty brutal. I remember losing multiple fights at the beginning of the game, and I was like, man, either I screwed up in character creation or the people I have in my party, which was Losa, the Red Prince, and Beast. And Losa is squishy. She's a caster. Beast was, he's a battle mage. And then my own character was, what did I play? Maybe a wizard, I think it was. And so I had basically 2 really squishy characters, and then Beast, who was at the beginning kind of meh, and then I had the Red Prince, who would just die to magic attacks, but he could handle like physical abilities really well. And so it was really challenging. But by the end of the game, and you're in arcs, and you're going through, just tying up all those character loose ends, like, that game is just incredible. I mean, it was, until the other games on this that are ahead of this game on this list, it was going to be our number 1 game, like, hands down. And we're talking like, this is like April to May, like halfway through the year, we're like, yeah, Divinity Original Sin 2's easily the number 1 game for this year.
Yeah.
It was just, I mean, the story itself was great too, for characters and, a world that I knew nothing about, a magic system that had no clue on how it worked. The whole thing was really compelling the more you dove into it. And I think it helped with how like gothic and dark the Fort Joy stuff is, especially that guy in the basement, the like creepy butcher dude or whatever.
Yeah.
So it really just painted this macabre picture that was really...
But it has a sense of humor to it too.
Yeah.
That's kind of the... Yeah.
Especially you had the squirrel, Sir... What was his name?
Sir Loris?
Yes. You had him with you too, right? The whole time. So
yeah.
His cracks and stuff were great. That he would make on your behalf. And okay, so here's the question for you, if you remember. When you played, did Sir Loris, did he ever die and become like a ghost?
No.
So you kept him alive the entire game.
I guess so, yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
I don't know how.
So if he dies, he becomes a ghost, and then he still follows you around and stuff. But like, I was hell-bent on keeping him alive. And then at some fight somewhere, it was just wild. And then at the end of it all, my party's finally all regrouped, and I noticed that he's a ghost, and I was like, what the heck happened? Like, I didn't even see him get destroyed. So yeah, so anyway, that's my number 4, Divinity Original Sin 2. Just a really great turn-based RPG.
Number 3.
Number three also gets my Comfort Game award, and will probably surprise you. Definitely did me, and probably the listener too. And that's a game has a lot of mixed stuff going on, but New World.
Okay.
So
interesting.
Yeah, it's I don't know. There's something about New World going back into it that unlike World of Warcraft, and even to a degree, my homeboy, Guild Wars 2, there's just something about New World that's just comforting, and I think it just has to do with the environment, the graphics. Just it has that drawl, I think, especially this time of year for me. It's just like, oh, I can just kind of relax and do some harvesting and maybe do some side quests and work on some weapon skills, and just kind of relax and putz around in New World and just have a little fun. But recently this year was the kind of a push back into it with some of the community, and had a lot of fun doing some expeditions finally in that game, and kind of playing around with different builds, with a tank build, and now healing a little bit when we can, and for expeditions, and just having a lot of fun, particularly with like Ardeth and Weevil and Wataru, and and Dubs, doing some of that kind of stuff. And hopefully we can get some more people in on it, because at its core, I think New World is a really good game. It has some technical issues, it has some stuff going on, but as a placeholder for our beloved my beloved future Lotro MMO, Lord of the Rings MMO, I'm still gonna keep my pulse on it, and it's free. I mean, well, it's not free, but once you buy it, it's yours. It's like Guild Wars 2. There's no sub, so that has it. But the recent expansion, I had a blast with too. The
Angry Earth, Rise of the
Angry Earth. I can't think of anything today. I need to go on a vacation soon. Well, next week.
Next week.
Next week. Just one more week. But yeah, it's had a lot of fun with that expansion too. So and now we have the Winter Convergence Festival. There's a whole new season 4. So there's a whole storyline. And this new storyline from season 4, I'm having a good time with it, and it can be kind of challenging too. I'm like, there's some soul trials in there. I'm like, whoa, I just got owned like by stuff, and I'm like, okay. Yeah, I have to pay more attention to that mechanic. But it's been a lot of fun. There's a whole little mini, well, don't want to get too spoilery, but there's a fun little actually reminded me of the little scene in Harry Potter where they're playing chess.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
I make my move, you'll be free to take the queen. No, Ron, no.
Yeah, that's the only part of Harry Potter movies that I really remember, I think. I just blacked out on the rest of them. But it's there's a whole like playing chess with it's really, really cool. But there's the cutscenes in that game they're added, which is nice. And I'm sure you're like, what cutscenes? I don't remember any cutscenes. And they're a little goofy, but it's still cool that they're trying. I hope they try a little harder when they embrace the biggest IP that they're one of the biggest that you could probably embrace. So, but yeah, Comfort MMO, Yeah, number 3, New World.
All right. My number 3 is also my surprise hit game of the year. And that is Remnant 2. This game came out half a week before, it was like a week before Baldur's Gate 3. And Remnant 2 was in my opinion, the perfect iteration of a Dark Souls type game with guns. It also features something that I think we're going to see more of, especially in a game called Nightingale that we've mentioned a time or two. But this concept of like traversing into other realms and worlds, from like a hub destination. So we see that with Destiny 2. Like Destiny 2 does that and has been doing that for a very long time. Remnant 2 took it a little more literally with, yes, you are on old Earth or new Earth or whatever, post-apocalyptic Earth, and you're going to go into this portal and go into wacky worlds,
Yeah.
Across the dimensions. But the thing is that like I had played Star Wars Jedi Survivor that May, I think it was, ish. And Jedi Survivor is kind of a Souls-like, the combat's very Souls-like. And so diving into this again, with guns, I was like, okay, this is implemented extremely well. And there are a massive amount of weapons. There are a massive amount of secrets in this game. And I think that's really what sold me on the game specifically, is that, I dive in and I can go and I find this secret passageway and it leads me to this item that I don't know what it does. And then later on you find a way to use that item and then you get this cool weapon out of it or something. Heck, the Archon class is this whole long list of items that you have to have equipped in every single slot. And then it opens up a portal on a random world, that you can then go into for this really out of this world, I don't want to spoil it, location that then you find some things for, and then you get those things, and then you can unlock the class. And so it's a ton of fun. And there's like a space. It's not really space. I don't know. It's like an alien space planet that feels a lot like Scorn or an H.R. Giger inspired world. The dark fantasy world is just that, like dark fantasy, like something straight out of Elden Ring. And then there's like a more foresty, that's the one Yaesha or something. I've explored that the least, so I don't know much about it. But
Yeah.
all in all, like, this game was a huge surprise, a huge pleasant surprise. I remember like the Sunday before BG3 released, I sat down and really started diving into this game, and I was like, this is fun. Like, this is really fun. And we hopped in a voice channel on Discord with some other people, and we're like, this game is a blast. And to the point where Stark and Chase have completely finished it, plus the DLC and everything. Like, Remnant 2, if you haven't played it, you really, really need to. Like, it's an incredible game that completely got overshadowed by another game that came out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's my number 3.
Number 2.
My number 2 is Remnant 2. So there you go.
Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I can't really think of anything to add. It definitely plays like a Souls-like Elden Ring with guns.
Yeah, not Elden Ring in the sake of like open world, but Elden Ring has kind of become the de facto Dark Souls game that people mention because it is basically the best.
Yeah.
But
But yeah, it's just a really, really solid game. The only reason it didn't get the surprising game on my list was because V Rising just kind of
surprised you more.
Yeah, it surprised me more. I just didn't think I was like, oh, I'll give this a shot, but just didn't think I was going to enjoy it as much as I did. But yeah, Remnant 2 is just a top-notch game. I've purchased the DLC. I have yet to play it. I've been kind of waiting to see
a break in gaming.
Yeah, just I don't know, but
well, I never beat the game too, so maybe I need to do that.
Yeah, I haven't either. I don't think. Maybe I did. I don't know. Probably not. Maybe I did. I don't know. So yeah, maybe that's more reason to go back and eventually play it, and then jump into the DLC. I definitely didn't unlock the Archon class. It didn't.
I thought you did. Maybe I got further than you did then.
Probably so. Yep, that's my number 2.
Okay, my number 2 may come as a surprise to you, but it's actually Starfield. And
that is a surprise.
I didn't play it a massive amount, and there's a reason for that. But when I fired up Starfield, it looked great. There were a lot of loading screens. But there was this, so Newbie, like lifelong friend of mine. He's played some games with us off and on. There was a sense when I loaded up Starfield and started going through it. It brought me back to like the days playing at his house when we'd play Morrowind. So the first Elder Scrolls game to hit a console. And we'd play it on Xbox, and just that sense of like exploration and that Bethesda style RPG, right? And so I load up Starfield and I start playing and all this, and it was very polished. So that was a plus. Like, Fallout 76 was the last Bethesda game that came out. From a Bethesda studio, and that was extremely buggy on launch. But Starfield, no bugs, extremely smooth, polished gameplay, and it literally, everything was like Starfield coat of paint, even down to like all the text. Everything felt like it belonged in the Starfield universe. It did feel like I was playing a Bethesda game, like a Skyrim or a Fallout 4 or whatever. But it, with the way the mechanical issues or not issues, but things worked. But the game itself was just this exploration space game that I've always kind of wanted. Now, there are some things like just how much of it is loading screens. You go anywhere in Neon into any building, loading screen. You go to your ship, loading screen. Very rarely do you actually fly around space unless there's a mission that has you doing it. It's just your ship is like your hub, and you use it to fast travel to all the locations. So in today's world, that's a bit of dated game design. I think Starfield, a lot of people have made this joke, but I'll make it too. Starfield is the game of the year of like 2013. Truthfully, the game design, Bethesda's way of telling RPG stories is outdated, and I think that's a really hard pill for them to swallow, but a lot of people think that, and that's kind of how the critics and consumer alike have landed on Starfield, and which is why we barely saw it at the Game Awards or any awards, is because it's simply, it's a Bethesda game, but Bethesda hasn't innovated the way they do their RPGs really in the past 10 years since Skyrim came out. For me, though, like the shipbuilding was incredible. Really got addicted to that. I haven't even touched the settlement building, but it follows the same rules where you could build pretty much anywhere. You place your little module down and build. But even the story, I really enjoyed what I was experiencing specifically with the Rangers. I didn't really get too far. Well, it's not that I didn't get too far. I just ignored the stuff with the Constellation. But just in general, like that sense of exploration and kind of losing yourself in exploration. You know, like I went down into this abandoned facility I found on a moon, and 45 to 60 minutes later, I had gone through it all because it was a lot more of a maze and bigger than I expected. And I come out onto the planet, and you've got the ray tracing, the sun. It looked incredible. And so just in general, like, I think Starfield deserved more than it got, but at the same time, it wasn't that massive innovation sci-fi RPG that people hoped out of Bethesda. But for me, that's my number 2. Here we go.
All right.
And finally, number 1.
I forgot he did
Thanks,
that.
Rowan. Well, now we can release the elephant out of the room. I don't think anyone really... My number 1 is Maple Story. I'm just kidding. It's Baldur's Gate 3.
As is mine, so we'll just talk about it collectively.
Yeah. So, to anyone that doesn't know, I was a huge Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 fan, and then played Icewind Dale all the way through. Played all those games. I've been playing these types of games forever, and none of them really have reached this pinnacle. A lot to do with age, but also storytelling elements. Just everything came together in a perfect RPG. I mean, there's really... I don't really know how else to say it. It's just a masterpiece of a game, from the mechanics to implementing all of the elements Larian did with actual Dungeons and Dragons. They had an incredible, early access that lasted years, that they had to... that they got to pull from and got player feedback and all of this stuff that just made this game just what it is. And I have yet to completely finish it. I don't even remember what level I'm at, but I have to go back and finish this game because it is a masterpiece. So,
because we need to do our recap episode on the whole thing.
Yeah. Maybe that'll give everyone else enough time, especially our Xbox friends that are
just got it.
Hopefully they can get this game, or they will get this game. So if they haven't gotten this game, you need to get this game and play it. So,
what hasn't been said about Baldur's Gate 3? I mean, the multiplayer part that we did ended exactly how I predicted it would, because the 4 of us that were in this group, so myself, Shiloh, Tempest, and our friend Jeff, we had all played a single player playthrough. All but Shiloh had beaten it, but Shiloh's in Act 3's near the end, so we had experienced what there was to experience in Act 1 for the most part. And so going through the multiplayer in Act 1 was more like your typical tabletop, like, how can we... and there's a bit of magic that's lost in the video game medium as opposed to D&D, from what I can tell, because each of us was trying to, like, game the system, like, how can we be either super wacky and annoying, or how can we solve whatever issue lies before us in the most unusual way?
Yeah.
And in a game, like, you're fighting against this, like, unknown, computer entity. Like, it doesn't, there's no soul, there's no emotion there. It's just, how can I beat this game in this way? When it's tabletop D&D and there's a DM running things, it's like the equivalent of the player saying, how can we mess with the DM and try to, uproot all of his plans for this whole campaign? So that little aspect, like that magic is lost because it's a game. You can't break the game to that point. With that said, so many other elements about it make it so fun in a video game form because you don't have all the, the housekeeping stuff that a DM would normally do. It's all done within the system. All the rolls, all the checks. Like, you don't have to constantly check, okay, what was my dex again, or what's my charisma for this roll, and all that. Okay, let me check each of my items. Oh, I've got +2 charisma for this ring that I picked up off of a corpse. That's what has made Baldur's Gate 3 such a success, is because it has taken the popularity of Dungeons and Dragons and put it into a form that anyone, anywhere in the world can experience. And as was the case with the four of us, even people who aren't in the same state, we can't physically get together to play, or even country, we can't physically get together to play a tabletop D&D, even though it would probably be really, really fun. But we could get together and play this and do crazy stuff. So this game is going to be talked about for a very long time. It is a watershed moment in gaming as far as RPGs are concerned, and it further cements why what Bethesda was doing with Starfield just felt outdated. With all the cutscenes, the way Larian told the story, the voice acting, the animations, it's kind of sad to say, but I think Baldur's Gate 3 is more open world than Starfield was. With the exception of, you could land on a planet in Starfield and just explore, and it's all open world. But, that was all procedural generation. This was a handcrafted world, especially when you get to Act 3. You go anywhere in Act 3, anywhere in the city. And there's a lot of locations in that city, a lot of stuff to do. So I think we've said all that can be said about Baldur's Gate 3 and then some. And but yeah, that's our top 10 list of 2023, top 10 games of 2023.
Yeah.
And for the record, I'm not super surprised that New World is on your list.
Really?
Yeah, because, and I said it before, and I don't know, I think you agree with this, but like, by not playing it at launch,
you did myself a favor.
You did yourself a favor, because now, and it's like kind of the same thing that with Guild Wars 2 for us, right? Like, although you did play that at launch, but that was so long ago that, like, you dive into Guild Wars 2 now, and it's such a different experience than what people that played at launch have said. And New World's going to be the same way. Like, that's partially my problem with the game, was that I didn't want to go start over,
Yeah.
And I probably did myself a disservice by not doing that, because I know that they've worked at the new player experience a lot in the past year or 2 years that it's been out. So that's, I think, like, if there was ever a case study for like when is the right time to play New World, it's follow the Shiloh example.
I guess so. Yeah. I don't really have anything else to say to that. It's I mean, it's not to say that New World is my favorite out of Guild Wars 2 or World of Warcraft. Because those are the three MMOs I have up here, or even Final Fantasy 14 that got an honorable mention. It's just that for this year, that was probably my top, the most fun I've had out of those three MMOs this year was in New World. So it's been the most interesting and enjoyable, and it's also been new. So, there's that.
Yeah, I did want to mention too for myself, like, I've got what I would say a few notable exceptions. So I did play a ton of games, And Final Fantasy 14 and World of Warcraft are not on my list, and they're not honorable mentions. And that's because specifically those two games, I'm really just getting started. I think, if I continue with Final Fantasy 14 and really dive into the expansions in 2024, like that game's really going to take off for me. And then World of Warcraft, when The War Within comes out, and they've included some of those quality life updates, like the war bands, where, all of your, I don't remember all the details, but I know that like your transmog stuff can be looted and it'll become account wide. And so, if I'm on my monk that's in light clothes and I go and pick up like a heavy piece, that'll still become transmogified, and then I can use it on a paladin or whatever. So so some of that stuff, like I expect that my time with both those games is not done. And I'm not saying my time with Guild Wars 2 is done, but we did make it an effort this year to get through everything story related for that game. So I mean, that's the thing. Like I said earlier, I've got 3 MMOs that I can kind of bounce between, and that's why some of them are excluded from this top 10. But all right, well, Shiloh, that wraps up this. I need to go back to
this year.
It does. It's been a wild ride. We're going to take a break for the holidays and for part of January, because I am completely renovating my desk and computer setup and everything. And so, like today I had to move my webcam from where it is, push one of my monitors off to the side just to have the webcam face me, so it's not like this weird profile. So we're going to wait till we can get everything in order and then fire up QTM Season 2 in 2024. And we've got one thing I would challenge you for, Shiloh, is maybe come up with a list. Mine is like, I don't have Steam up. Mine is like, I think 5, 6, or 7 games long that I for sure want to play this year.
This coming year, yeah.
2024. Like one of those is that Ruined King game that we talked about. Another is, I can't remember if I put Kingdom Come Deliverance on this or Shadow of War. Because it's Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War, right? Whatever the second one is. I don't remember which one's on this list, but I have, like 5 or 6 games in my Steam library that I'm like, I want to play this. And of course, I only made it 5 or 6 because there's going to be a ton of new stuff that comes out, plus older games that we continue to play and into 2024. But yeah, so I would challenge you with that, and then we come back in the spring, and for all our listeners, we're gonna see the winner, and we'll see what.
We should definitely. Fancy. I think it would be interesting and fun to maybe pick up and try out Tor, or you say SWOTOR. But yeah, I just say Tor because
do like a series of episodes on SWOTOR. Yeah,
that'd be interesting.
Should we pick the same class?
We have to pick the same alliance. So
same alliance, yeah. Both dark side,
either Sith or Rebel. I don't know. However, whichever you want to do.
Let's see how the story differs. Yeah, that'd be fun. So we'll look at that too. So again, this show, as we mentioned in episode 1, is really just about what we decide we want to do in games. It's not like we're going to do this because of the show. Let's find games that we want to give a try and then dedicate an episode to it, or 2 or 3, or maybe next year, if we start having more guests on, we'll bring in some more board game discussion, tabletop discussion, books, TV shows. I do know prior to Arcane Season 2, we are going to do an Arcane Season 1 recap. of 1 to 3 episodes on that. So
Yeah.
just some fun stuff in the works, but really it's just, whatever we end up doing in our free time. So,
Yep.
all right.
It'll be an interesting year next year. We'll have to
Yeah.
wait and see. I don't know if 2024 can top 2023,
It
but it won't. Let's just be reasonable and say
Yeah.
it won't. But I think there will be some surprises and, across the board on. And hopefully we get a lot of these Remnant 2 type of games that
Yes.
ended up being 2 and 3 on our list, respectively. So I think we might. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Just kind of games that just kind of pop out of nowhere and just sucker punch you. Like, pow, take that.
This was great. So, all right.
Yep.
Well, thank you, listener, for really this whole year supporting us, listening to the show on our journey, and just, talking to us and discussing stuff over on Twitter or in our Discord or wherever else. We really thank you for the support, and we hope to see you in 2024 for Season 2.
Yes.
Peace.
Later, everyone. Questing the Multiverse is brought to you in part by Coniff Productions, Howes Wood Designs, and Joel Crawford. To follow along with our adventures, please follow us on Twitter at QTM Podcast and consider joining our Discord, a link of which can be found in the show notes or in our Twitter bio. Want your questions or comments read on the show? Email us at questingthemultiverse@gmail.com. Finally, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving us a review or a follow wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening.